Hey guys, welcome back to another edition of OnPoint Quarantine, and this is continuing in our interview series. Today we are talking with Ben Pertl. Ben Pertl is a pastor, a teacher, a basketball coach, and he's just an all-around awesome guy. And he's going to be talking just about what it's like to be a coach, to coach kids, to work with parents and kind of the importance of good coaching in our lives and how that can be a reflection of the gospel. So I hope you guys enjoy. I thought it was a really good conversation. So thanks so much. We'll talk to you later. Bye. All right. Well, we are here with Ben Pertl. Ben Pertl is one of my friends. We've known each other for what would you say? Probably 10 years, maybe?
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Coming up on that pretty close.
Yeah, coming up on 10 years at least. We met in church camp ministries and whatnot. But before we get started, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, Ben?
Yeah, my name is Ben Pertl. I grew up in a small town, Southern Illinois, small town 2000, and I currently live and work in a big city of 7,000. So I've moved up in the world. We actually have restaurants that are open past 8 and stoplights.
There you go.
Over the past 10 years or so, I've worked with different churches with student ministry, and so I'm a small group leader. And I've run youth groups and been a director, and I've been a minister. I've been a substitute teacher in a lot of realms. But probably my favorite part of all of that is I've gotten to coach basketball at different levels from 6th to 12th grade, boys and girls. And so I spend my life in the gym. That's where I stuck my virtual background as. I thought it'd be fitting. But yeah, I love working with students. I love seeing them connect with Jesus, whether that's through an explicit lesson on a Sunday morning or
Right.
me getting on them and making them run up and down the court a little bit.
Oh my gosh, I remember those days. So you said you've coached on a lot of different levels. Now, if I remember correctly, you had like an undefeated state championship season a few years ago.
We
didn't you?
did. Yeah, a couple years ago in 2016, I was coaching 8th grade girls in Charleston, and we were 23-0 and undefeated state champs, and it was pretty special. I like to take credit for that, but honestly, they were good enough that I probably could have walked on the floor and said, "Go do basketball," and had a pretty similar outcome. So I don't want to overtake too much credit on that one.
Right. Well, so that's like one of those good things about your job. Like, what are the things that you love about coaching?
Oh man, it's really difficult as a student, especially when you get to the junior high and high school age, because you're learning how things work. You're told, and
Right.
you're at the point where you have more control, but at the same time, very little is in your control. You're trying to balance school and family issues and drama with teammates and friends, and then suddenly you're told to step, between the lines of the sport and put it all out, and focus on a very specific task. And my job is to, while the goal is to have them excel on the floor, I've really got to be aware and sensitive to all those things that are going on in their head.
Right.
And so for me, the hardest part, as well as, it's kind of my favorite part too, is having those conversations where it's after a game where, our point guard had home drama and he's just, out of his mind. How can I walk that line between calling you into action, but also having grace and understanding for what's going on outside of that world? And for me, I think my giftings and my talents and my experiences have all kind of positioned me uniquely in a place where I can say, hey, I don't necessarily have to teach a Sunday school class to communicate the gospel. I don't necessarily have to, be working in a church setting to show grace and understanding and compassion and model that in a way that's tangible for these kids to kind of take in.
It could almost be looked at as like a more biblical version of ministry, being, quote unquote tent maker or whatever it may be, working outside the walls of the church.
Well, I'll tell you what, the more I grow closer to Christ, the more I see those things modeled, and the more they captivate me, right? Where I'm so thankful for the church and the way that it edifies the body and the way that it equips the saints and builds up in those ways. But there's something special when you can take a faith that goes from, hey, come and see, to I'm gonna step down and into your world, right? Doesn't that really embody what Christ did for us?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I'm gonna step down and I'm gonna step in, and I'm gonna be, incarnate in your world.
Yeah.
And so that's how I view my role every time I, lace up my shoes and step onto the floor is in the coaching role.
So going with that, like you clearly have like a passion for this. What was your experience with coaches like when you were a kid, like good or bad?
Oh
Like,
my
what do you
gosh.
remember most?
Well, I had the same coach, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, sophomore, junior, senior.
Oh, wow.
And I had one stinker right in the middle in a freshman year. But I had a coach who, my biggest takeaway is that he showed up.
Uh-huh.
He was there. He was present. The standards he set for us were held to him as well.
Yeah.
He had a rule: no profanity. You can't cuss. We're going to respect the game and respect each other. And if you do, you've got laps to run.
Uh-huh.
And he wasn't above that standard himself. So when he would get really fired up and he'd let one slip, he was the first one at practice every morning. He was running his laps. He didn't try to hide it from us. He's like, before we start, I've got some run to do.
That's awesome.
And for me, I'm like, oh, all right, I'm going to follow your rules.
Yeah, that's the real deal. He's putting his money where his mouth is. I remember being in 7th grade, and I wasn't on the basketball team. I was the manager for the basketball team, which is what every 7th grade boy aspires to be, is the manager. But we made it to the state championship that year. And I won't name names for the coach because I'm sure he has changed by now. I think he really has. But, golly, he had the worst mouth. And we were in the state championship game at halftime, and he was just like, F word, every other word, just berating our guys because we were down like 15 points at the half. And it got so bad that the refs had to come in to the locker room and tell him that if he didn't calm down, like he was going to be ejected from the state championship game.
Oh my gosh.
And I think that was a big wake up call for him. But yeah, that was my biggest memories of having a coach. Like he was a good coach as far as getting you to play basketball well, but I struggled with his personal connection to us, as kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and my favorite thing is he's still a coach that I very much keep in contact with. Every time over the past 10 years that I've gone home and I've visited my family, I make an effort to stop in his classroom and just catch up.
Yeah.
So that presence hasn't left. When I was coaching in our state tournament in 2016, he made the drive up a few hours to be in the stands to support me. And that speaks volumes, I think.
Oh yeah. And you've already talked about this a little bit, but like, as a Christian, besides like incarnation, what do you think are some of your other roles in coaching, like as a Christian with these kids?
Oh gosh. I hesitate, especially in our community. And I think more and more across the board, you're seeing a lot of non-traditional home units, family units. And I mean, I've had kids who, single parent who works out of necessity, right? A lot. And so you've got these students who are growing up with just a different set of models and leaders in their life. And it's not anyone's fault necessarily. It's just one of those realities. And so what I've tried to make myself available for is just see a need, fill a need.
Yeah.
Right. And that's modeling behavior. That's sometimes giving a ride. That's picking up a tab for someone's Jimmy John's before the game. Things of that nature. But for me, it really is just being aware of what I'm doing at all times, the way that I'm speaking, the way that I'm talking about people. At this point, I've spent a lot of time recently with junior hires, especially, and they're kind of that perfect age because they're old enough to have a good conversation about why LeBron's the greatest of all time. But they're just like, they're just young enough to be a little bit of afraid of you, right? So they listen to you a little bit more. They're not necessarily too cool for school, but they're also super intuitive and they pay attention. And so what I see as my biggest responsibility is like, what I post online, what I say about refs, the excuses that I make, the fingers that I point, all of that plays in, because what I can say all the best things, all the right things in the world, but if I'm not acting that way, I'm not carrying that out, it's not going to land whatsoever.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like we're in this world today where sports are just year round now, all the time. I'm not sure what it's like up there, but down here in Brentwood, kids go immediately from school football to wrestling or rugby or basketball straight into track or baseball straight into summer club sports, whatever their sport of focus might be.
Yeah.
No off seasons anymore. Wednesday nights are taken up by games or practices. Sundays, I had a small group of high school boys, the seniors, and they went to the state championship this year. And so during the playoffs, they were practicing on Sunday nights. And so they just weren't able to come. And so I guess my thing to you would be, in this new culture of like sports, because it is different than when we were kids.
Right.
What's like one thing you would like parents to know, like as a coach?
Yeah, for sure. In fact, before we all got shut down, I had an 8th grade boy tell me how excited he was that he's got a 130 game baseball schedule this summer.
Oh my gosh.
That ran, end of March in through, their first game was April 1st and it runs through July. So, in the span of a couple months, you're playing 130 baseball games. But what was modeled for me is I went to youth group on Wednesday nights and I had a coach who said, see you Thursday, duck out early. And that was very much valued. But right now, what I would want to communicate with parents is,
especially dads, like what would you tell dads specifically?
I get it. And that might not be the answer that you would expect. But I've spoken with a number of parents who are church families who, whether it's right or wrong is not the issue so much as it is, that's just what the reality is, right? They're going to be they're going to be engaged. They're going to be in these sports. They're going to be doing all these things and traveling. And what I've heard repeatedly from parents is, we want to be at church, but we also have these obligations, and we're really torn on what the right thing to do is. And what they've said was, on those rare Sundays or Wednesdays when we don't have anything, one, that's our family time because we don't get family time.
Yep.
Two, when we do make an effort to come into church, we're met with responses like, whoa, look what the cat dragged in.
Yeah.
Imagine seeing you here. And so they're of a mind of, I'm already conflicted about this decision. And when I show up to these church people, all I met with is sarcasm and dismissal of, wow, nice of you to come around.
Yeah.
And so that just tilts the access in the other ways. And so, it's really easy, I think, as a church to sit in our ivory towers and say, well, this is what should be, right? This is what the Bible says should be happening. And unfortunately, the reality isn't. And I've tried to make strides of, hey, I get it. I'm going to keep inviting you. I'm going to keep trying to provide programming and connection points where you feel like this is a can't miss time.
Yeah.
But more importantly, I'm going to, again, step into your world. And if you're not going to be in Sunday morning service where I can shake your hand and say good morning, I'm going to catch you after practice. I'm going to catch you after a game and check in, right? I'm going to embrace reality, and I'm going to try to be like Jesus and keep inviting you back. Yep. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I don't think so. And it might not be the holy answer that churches might want to hear, but unfortunately, it's the reality.
Well, I can
either be bitter about it or I can change it.
Yeah, that's the thing. I feel like there is no right answer these days. There's the best that we can do, right?
Yeah.
And the best that a lot of these parents can do is to try to, get there, when they can. And, you hear people say, well, they shouldn't have made those commitments in the first place. But, I always thought that too, until I had my 2 boys. And now I see if Sellers really wants to get into soccer, as his dad, it's my job to monitor that and to make sure that it doesn't take over his life. But I also want him to enjoy what he's doing and to succeed at what he's doing too. And so, I get it too. It's a balance, and it is tough. And
what I hear often is, well, they're not. It's not like they're going to make the NBA or they're going to make the NFL or the chances of them even playing at college. So what's the ultimate importance of it of sports at this age? If you live in a town of any size, I grew up in a small town where basketball tryouts were just show up and everyone was on the team, right? Yep. We didn't have the numbers for that. But anymore, it's not. We're not we don't see kids competing in these off seasons to, play next level ball. They're playing to stay even with their peers so that when the time comes to make the junior high team or the high school team, they've got a shot.
Right.
Right. And so they've got a chance for that team, all the things that kind of come with that. And so it's a reframing of, it's an old argument of, it's not necessary if they're not going to make the NBA. The game has changed.
Right.
Well, unfortunately, but that's a reality.
Well, and here's the other thing. Yeah, they might not make the NBA, but how many lessons did you learn growing up on the basketball court at practice from your coach?
I'm doing what I'm doing now only because I was in that position.
Exactly. There are so many lessons to gain from being part of a team that are invaluable in life in general. And so, I mean, of course you'd want your kids to learn those lessons. And sometimes that comes with, overcommitment. Sometimes that comes with giving up things that you think are important on one hand and you have to trade them for something in the other hand. But there's, regardless of how far it takes them in the athletic world, it's going to take them far, I feel like, in the real world, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and imagine if the church dug its heels in on this point and said, guess what? You've chosen sports or athletics or dance or whatever over church. Good luck. We'll see you when we see you. Yep. Now, suddenly, all of those lessons that are being learned in the classroom, on the court, as part of that team, have no way of being filtered through a gospel lens.
Yep, that's
and
right.
So the church is neglecting the students. They're also neglecting and writing off the parents in a lot of ways. And so they want to say, hey, we realize this is a reality. How can we help you when your son comes home from practice and tells you what happened and these ups and downs? How can we help you reframe that in a gospel way?
Yep.
And I think that's a really unique opportunity that a lot of, we're not prepared for. I don't think it's neglectful or malicious by any stretch, but the game has changed so rapidly, even in the past 5 years, that we're really going to have to look at how we're addressing these things and move forward in a good way.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Before I let you go, I wanted to do kind of a lightning round, if you're down.
Okay. I will try my best to answer quickly.
Yeah, quick fire. These are questions of little importance, but I think they're fun anyway. So, if you're ready, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. First question: favorite book you've ever read?
The Bulgariad by David Eddings.
Okay, what's that?
It's an old fantasy book. Okay. If you've ever heard of Aragon, I was a big fantasy nerd growing up, like Dungeons and Dragons and Sword and Sorcery kind of stuff. I love it. It's like 8 books. It's super big. I read it every year.
Okay, nerd.
Yep.
If you were on death row and it's time to go, what's your death row meal?
Endless shrimp from Red Lobster.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
They couldn't kill me until I stopped eating, and if it's endless, we're pushing that down the road.
You are failing this lightning round so good. Okay.
Heard that a lot this week. It's okay.
You get tickets to either the Super Bowl, the Grammy Awards, or the Stanley Cup Finals. Where are you going?
Oh shoot, Super Bowl, I guess. It's the only one I've ever watched before. I really couldn't care about any of them.
Yeah, I agree. The worst movie you've ever seen?
Oh gosh, what's that Avatar: The Last Airbender by M. Night Shyamalan?
Oh yeah, that's pretty bad. That's pretty bad.
It was awful.
I don't think I even finished it. And so this last question, I want you to take all that you've learned in your entire life and summarize the greatest lesson you've learned as about being a man.
Suspense.
And answer in 30
sorry, hang on. Restart that question. You froze. We're like,
Oh, okay. The greatest lesson you've ever learned in your entire life about being a man, please answer in 30 seconds or less.
Oh, gosh. Don't put shaving cream in people's camp beds.
Oh, man. What would happen there?
I don't know. Jerks. No. I really believe this. And I've, if you ask any of my players, my 2 least favorite things in the world, telling a lie and making excuses.
Oh, there you go.
And that's what I'm going to have to go with. And that's what I hammer home at every intent is, don't lie to me. It's disrespectful. It disrespects you. It disrespects me. And don't make excuses.
Yep.
Take responsibility for actions. Don't point fingers. Don't blame others.
That's awesome.
And That's how I operate every practice. It rears its head every day.
That's awesome. Well, I'm so glad that you were able to do this. Thank you so much. I know our guys will really enjoy it. So thank you for joining us, and yeah, see you later.
Yep, anytime.
All right.